I demand your respect. I am the embodiment of fear itself.
This is like our third film that has something to do with horror, supernatural, something that's around that area in the last couple of weeks. And with this film, I'm comparing this film to like Insidious, okay? The Insidious series or Conjuring or something like that where, you know, someone had to come in to exorcise some type of spirit or negative demon or entity or whatever. This one did it well, but very confusing.
You talked about Insidious. You kind of forget, because we're so steeped in our own culture, how much of horror is actually Christian horror. It's very specific. And so when a movie is not Christian horror, suddenly it's like, I don't know the rules and what happened and what's going on. But personally, I found it to be exciting.
Starting off with this film, I was like, yo, this thing is slow. It's super slow for me in the beginning of this. And then it starts to pick up toward the middle. It's not like the story beats lost me or anything like that. It was really the pacing. I was like, okay, I get that you're there for the baby, but move this thing along. Okay.
I agree with that. Yeah. The pacing does feel a little slow. The way they treat the supernatural, they treat it so deadly serious. They're like, yo, it's real. And he even says, I just don't have time for non-believers. And as a matter of fact, they literally don't speak about non-believers ever again in this movie. This movie is not about, oh, are these guys right or are these guys wrong? It's not about that at all. I watched the dub version and then I didn't like it. Like the voices sounded kind of bizarre to me and they sounded kind of cartoony and I don't know, like they were phoning it in.
Bone Gil, you've gotten even more handsome.
Really?
Ugh, don't tell him that. The ladies always flock around him. It's inflating his ego.
And then I took the dub version off and I feel like I could hear more of the sound effects in the background. But I had a hard time following the story.
봉길이는 더 이뻐졌어.
진짜요?
아유, 말도 마요. 언니들이 서로 데리고 다닌다고 하기 버릇 나빠지게.
But I do understand that it felt slow and it felt difficult to get into, mostly because the movie has to like explain a lot of what's going on. And I've said it a million times. If you get caught up in the exposition, boy, oh boy, does that drag your movie down. But for me, once you understood the background, the movie, I thought, clicked into place. And like you said, this deeply rich family, they call up this shaman. And they're like, hey, can you come help out? Because our baby won't shut up. All he does is cry, cry and cry and cry. And we're afraid that this might be a generational curse because his father had it and his father before him had it. So can you come and see what's going on? And so the shaman checks out the baby and she's like, yo, one of your ancestors is pissed, like absolutely livid. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on, but the best thing to do is to exhume the body and move it because maybe he doesn't like where he is. And the family's like, no. Do not touch.
Don't do that.
Grandpa's grave.
Don't you do that.
Don't do it. Matter of fact, how about you just burn it? Just dig up the body and just burn that shit.
Burn it. Yeah.
Don't open it. Don't look at it. Burn it. The shaman, she's like, that's really weird. And you want me to burn it like today? Like not, you want like not in the future, like now? And so she gets the help of a guy who calls himself a geomancer. And a geomancer finds good places for people to be buried in. This geomancer finds the exact right place, so it's not insulting, so it's very respectful. And I think this is interesting and unique because here in the United States and in Western culture, we mostly bury our dead. But that is not the norm everywhere. Most places, they cremate their bodies. So only the richest of the rich will bury their body and just leave them to rot, essentially. The geomancer is the main character from Oldboy. So he is literally one of the best working actors in the world. And she's like, hey, can you go check out this body? It's like buried up on this hill somewhere. And he goes up there and he's like, yo, this is not right.
The tombstone doesn't have any engravings on it or anything. It just has numbers on its side.
And it's bizarrely close to the North Korean border. Like, they're like, oh, you can see North Korea from here, you know? So, and he's like, no, The soil, rotten. It's faced the wrong way. There are foxes everywhere. That is a bad omen. I ain't doing this. I don't care how much you paying me. Deuces. I'm out. Eventually, of course, it's like in every movie, he's convinced to, dig up the grave. They do a very interesting and kind of creepy ritual that involves like pig's blood, and she's got to cut up the pigs and does just this like knife dance. I thought that shit was awesome. I thought it was really cool.
I thought they were listening to Metallica or something.
Yeah, because they're like jumping and singing the whole thing. Like
all that stuff. I was like, yeah.
Off to never, never land.
But more or less, it goes well, right? It goes pretty good.
Until
Yep. One of the grave diggers, he's in there trying to refill the hole, I guess, and he sees a snake, and he gets startled and chops the snake's head off. And the second that snake's head comes off, the clouds roll in. They can't cremate the body, apparently, while it's raining. And from there, everything just goes downhill.
Yeah, because that's bad luck and stuff about cremating the body when it's raining.
Right, the spirit can get to wherever it needs to go.
A positive place. But when he chopped off the head of that snake, it was a human head?
Right.
Somehow?
Right. And your confusion, I think, is on purpose. Because a snake with a human head is considered a bad omen, but not in Korean culture, in Japanese culture. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, am I confused? Am I confused with what's happening? I almost felt like it did something racist. I was like, oh my God, I thought this was Korean, But apparently it's Japanese. But no, I learned something new about both Korea and Japan. And this movie mostly serves as a metaphor for what happened in the past. Apparently, Japan occupied Korea in the past, actually the fairly recent past, like around World War II era. And during that time, there were some Koreans who pledged their loyalty not to Korea, but to the occupiers, to Japan. And by digging up this body, they learned that this family has been cursed because their grandfather was one of those traitors. He was someone who turned their back on his home country to side with Imperial Japan. And I thought that was really, really fascinating.
When they're taking the coffin and the body to the morgue because it's raining, there's a guy there they pay the other mortician. And he says, there's a bunch of grave robbers who's been up there that's around there robbing graves and stuff like that. We're going to take care of it down here. And he knows that this family is super rich. So he's like, I'm going to crack this thing open to see if there's riches in there I can steal.
Right.
And then that's when the spirit or the soul comes out. When this happens, their grandfather is coming to take out his family members.
Right. And he wants to kill his blood, kill his family, mostly because he was buried in a shitty spot and he apparently had been yelling for 100 years. And as the shaman said, all other emotions had left that spirit. It was just anger and resentment for his own blood for leaving him up there on the hill. Again, at this point, we don't know or understand that this person was a traitor. So we're like, why is he so mad? And why did the family essentially disrespect, their ancestor? Matter of fact, it would seem the family went through a lot of lengths to disrespect the ancestor, because they hired a monk that was a monk that our geomancer had never heard of, to make sure he found the exact right spot in the exact right place. So there's something specific about this place.
That was on purpose.
Yeah, they're like, why? What's up with that? And then things get a little complicated. Like you said, I don't know the history of Korea or Japan as fluently or as well as I know our own history. So it actually kind of gives you a glimpse into what literally the rest of the world sees when they watch our movies. It's a clear glimpse as to why things like Star Wars does not do well overseas at all. Because they don't understand our norms and they don't understand our culture in the same way that, they understand their own or we understand our own. Right. So I actually liked this because it puts you in a rare position, at least as an American. It makes you appreciate, I guess, what our movies look like to other people. And again, I always like seeing through the eyes of other people. I think that's fun, and I always think that's a great opportunity to learn.
And to be honest with you, when you're looking through the eyes of other people around the world, it seems like with these stories that the themes are bolder, and it's actually like more thought out and thoughtful too.
Yeah,
you know, because when this story kicks in, and you see that basically this family treated their ancestor this way, you're like, damn.
Yeah, like, why did you do that? Once the spirit gets out, it's like it starts killing people. It literally starts killing the main characters who actually called the shaman in, right? Like that dude gets axed. In order to protect the baby, they burn the body, they burn everything, even though it's an overcloud day and it's raining. They're like, fuck it, this guy's just gonna have to suffer in the afterlife so we can save this baby. And they do.
And then they uncover something else. They go back to the coffin because things are the burial, because things are unsettling still.
All right.
And he's digging more to check around, and he's like, doom, doom, doom. He's like, there's something else here. And it is a coffin that is vertical.
Right.
Okay?
It's been buried vertical. Right.
And it's not a normal coffin. This is for a 7-foot, 10-foot person, whatever. Right. And they take it out. It is chained with barbed wire around it to keep whatever inside from getting out.
Right. The geomancer, he looks at the barbed wire and he's like, you know what? I'm not sure if that's to keep people out. It might be to keep something in. Maybe we shouldn't touch this thing. You know what I mean? Maybe we should just leave it alone. And then he talks to another monk and he learns that the reason why they started all these rumors about potentially there being riches in there isn't to stop grave diggers. It's actually to stop like Korean patriots who know that this guy and this traitor and what we learn later to be like a samurai demon type person is buried there and needs to go. And so they are trying to keep people from digging up, their ancestor, because they know if they don't do it just right, there's going to be a lot of problems. And so we learn that the guy that's in the, 10-foot, 7-foot, I don't know, humongous coffin, we learn that he is like a demon, some sort of a demon that the spirit has fused with the physical world to the point where our shaman couldn't feel it. She was like, I can usually feel spirits because they're not tied to anything. But this person, she couldn't sense because they were something new and something unique. Now, we watched last week The Watcher. And I said, I love folk horror, but this movie right here sucks balls. You know what I'm saying? Ironically, this movie has so much more in common with The Watchers than I would have ever imagined. First of all, it's a folk horror, right? So it's literally the same genre. Did not know that going into this. And then this movie also uses mirrors, just like in The Watcher. Except when I spoke about the mirrors in The Watcher, I said, I think the director just thought they looked cool. And that was it. She was like, this shit look dope, But for this movie, the mirrors are used to glimpse onto the other side, to see the spirit attacking people.
Since we're talking about The Watchers, you said the different ending is supposed to be, I was watching movie A, but it turned out to be movie B.
Right.
And that's exactly what this was.
Right.
I thought I was watching a movie about exercising the things of the spirit, whatever, and try to save the baby.
Yep.
That was at an hour and 20 minutes of this film when they saved the baby. Okay.
Right.
Later, it's about connecting the dots to why that spirit was there in the first place with the Japanese culture, which it was so confusing, but refreshing.
You think you're gonna watch a Korean Ghostbusters type movie, but really this is less about the ghost or the spirit and more about the history of Korea and the things that they've gone through and the real life horror that happened in Korea, very literally being dug up, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For everyone to see. And how this kind of horror, even though it's in the past and people want to forget it, you really can't forget your past. Your past will always follow you and it will always color your present. I've heard someone say that history explains not where you are, but why you're here. Why things are the way they are. And
another bar. Sorry.
and that is kind of this movie. It's not just that the baby or that the family is being haunted. It's how and why they're being haunted, because they can't escape the real life horror that their family participated in.
If you don't know your history, it's going to come back to haunt you and the rest of your family members.
Exactly. You can hide your history, you can bury it, but until you really understand it, you can never move forward. And this family, they tried to hide it. They tried, but they could not. That history literally rose from its grave to haunt the family. And I think that's very fascinating. And I love that. I think that's a really fun message. When the spirit possesses another person, not only is he evil, you're like doing like the Nazi salute. You know what I'm saying? Like this ish is bad. There's also another really interesting moment where the shaman goes to the rich people's houses and she's looking around. She's more or less explaining like, oh, this is what I do. I can find the paranormal, stuff like that. And she's treating it so seriously. In this movie, it treats all that stuff so seriously. And while she's speaking, she looks on the shelf and she sees a statue with a swastika on its belly. And she's like, And so she looks behind the swastika statue, and behind it is a demon statue, literally in the shadows. And again, I can't think of a better metaphor for this movie than that exact imagery, than that image. And so I think this filmmaker has a lot of skill with visual storytelling.
And it definitely foreshadowed what was happening underneath the ground with that image. I totally forgot about that, man. Great eye. Great eye.
I appreciate it. You probably missed it because you were reading the subtitles.
Exactly. I was on like, oh God.
But again, that's literally how the rest of humanity sees our movies. You know what I'm saying? Like they're reading subtitles. So again, to me, it makes me realize the privilege that I have, that movies are literally made for my culture. You know what I mean? And so I just accept it. Like think about, you said Insidious. Think about how confusing and bizarre Insidious must look like to people that don't understand the Christian religion. It just has got to be gibberish because they probably don't explain anything because they just assume you know. And this movie kind of operates like that. This movie is for a Korean audience, and they just assume you know.
And when you come in expecting one thing, because I definitely did come in expecting Insidious but Korean, but then the backstory behind it, I'm like, wait, that's a Japanese helmet on this buried with this thing.
Exactly, that tripped me out too. I was like, that looks so much like a samurai helmet. I'm like, did they have samurai in Korea? I'm like, no. So again, in my head, I'm like, am I confused? So yeah, I totally understand.
Out of the 3 horror films that we've seen, this is probably number 2, right behind In a Violent Nature for me lately.
Yeah, I agree. But like to your point, I think one of the reasons why this movie, for me personally, just can't get above a certain level is because, like you said, I'm not Korean, and I don't know that history. I don't know it as intimately as as someone else might. I could totally see and understand how this movie could hit hard for a lot of Koreans. I get that. You know what I'm saying? I get that. I guess this probably sounds corny now, but I just remember watching Black Panther, a movie that was like aimed right at me, and just being like, you know what I'm saying? Feeling like, whoa, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I also remember that feeling of being unable to explain that to, white people, right? And so like, I get it. Like, I get why Korean people would love this movie. Apparently, it was like the #1 movie in Korea. It's just like going gangbusters over there. Mostly because I think it not only looks at history, but it actually has like a critical eye to your own history, to their own national history. While I enjoyed this movie, I did not think it was like perfect. Again, the history aside and the culture differences aside, I thought the way they beat our demon was confusing. There's a point in the film, just like in every film, where it just looks like all hope is lost, right? All the people that need to help, they're in danger or they're dead. Right. And it looks like our main character, the guy from Oldboy, is about to eat it. But then suddenly, for like almost no reason, there's like a voiceover, which I guess this is like our main character's thoughts, where he talks about the elements of feng shui and how the literal elements on Earth, like, fire, water,
wind, fire.
Yeah.
Based on the energy of the earth,
fire, water, wood, and metal, forming the 4 cardinal directions.
He explains how these things balance and stuff like that, and how he can defeat fire with like wet wood. And I'm like, what? I wish they'd seeded that earlier. You know what I mean?
The burning metal. The opposite of which is the element wet wood.
I wish I went into that scene with that information instead of being told it during the scene. Because when you're kind of told it during the scene, it kind of feels like, you remember when you're a kid and you're playing like paper, scissors, rock, and you win, but the other person's like, oh, I don't mean rock, I mean grenade. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it felt like. I was like, oh, you lost.
Grenade?
And I'm like, oh, there's just like this secret thing, just change the rules. So while I like this movie,
I mean, dynamite.
Exactly. While I like the movie, like I thought it got kind of sloppy and funky for me personally near the end.
If you notice, when the foxes came along for the first time and they see them coming up on the top of the hill, they were just looking and observing and stuff like that. And when they uncovered the first coffin, they were like, all right, cool. Take that.
They're like, whatever. Exactly.
But when the second time they came up there, they was like, all right, get out of here, dog. We gotta go. You know,
at least in Western culture, if you describe someone as being fox-like, they're usually untrustworthy, right? And they're usually tricking you or somehow. And we learned that this family and their curse essentially was a cover. It was a sleight of hand. The real corpse, the real issue, the real problem was actually under that body. There is something buried under the body. And so I think the fox, at least from my point of view, I think the fox was like, this is a trick. And we are trying to make sure our trick stays in place. Because if it doesn't, we gonna have some problems.
Yeah, for sure. I watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's, at least in the live action version, there's a fox in there. And that is like, the fox that's in the spirit world is there to guide. Guide someone through the spirit world.
Wasn't the fox also a guide in Ghost of Tsushima? That he could, the foxes could guide you to little secrets in the wood and stuff like that?
Little secrets and stuff, Connecting some things there.
That's right. Again, another little connection, potentially, to Japan. Again, a culture I did not expect to be talked about so extensively in this film. Also, isn't it interesting how this movie just like ends? When's the last time you saw a movie that like ended and it wasn't like, but the ghost is still here? No, it just ends. You know what I'm saying? Like I liked that, and it felt kind of refreshing.
Well, I scrolled to the side. I'm like, is there anything else like a jump scare or something that's supposed to be coming through or something like that?
Exactly.
Nothing.
You're kind of like, this movie's supposed to be digging in my pockets. Why isn't it doing it? Why isn't it baiting me for, the sequel? And it doesn't. It just like ends. Also with this movie, it made me appreciate movies, because you kind of forget how little movies are in movies these days. And what I mean by that is there's just this over-reliance on CGI and special effects and things that are just in a computer. Seeing something that real, like actually shooting in a real place, you really can't replicate it. And a lot of movies don't do that. And this movie went through pains to make sure they shot outside and they shot in actual locations and they built physical sets, and all the most of the special effects are done in camera. Like I said, to represent a ghost, they literally just rack the focus. They're like, oh, the ghosts are always out of focus, always. And I was like, I get it, like it. Or the ghosts are always in a mirror or in a reflection. I like that a lot, but I feel like if an American person were to remake this movie, it would be a CGI extravaganza. I like a quiet, thoughtful movie that feels grounded on Earth, and it is unfortunately quite rare that you see that these days in Western films.
Don't touch it, America.
That's funny. Yeah, I feel like this is definitely a movie that we would end up remaking at some point, but like, Let's not.
I know I did enjoy this film, even when I watched the subtitle ones. It was a little confusing, but I came around in the end. You enjoyed this film. You said it's not really a perfect film from your Western eyes, and I do totally get that. But more importantly, what did you think of this film? Get in the comments if you have seen it, and let us know what you thought of Exhuma.
뭐가 나왔다고 거기서. 겁나 험한 게.
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. We really appreciate you guys. We've been talking to people in the comments and, you know, congratulating us to almost getting to 1,000 subscribers. So if you are new to us and you're seeing our faces, get down there, hit that subscribe button right at the bottom, because it's gonna get us there eventually. All right. And if you did like this review, please hit the thumbs up. It really does help out this channel. Or you can hit the thumbs down, whichever you choose. It is your opinion. Just remember one thing: it's mostly wrong. Respect your past, okay?
And don't forget it, or you're bound to repeat it.
Granddaddy!
That's right. He gonna show up in that mirror and yoke you.
Yoke you, boy.